Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're cracking open the brain of Google's latest and greatest AI, Gemini. We're going to find out how it thinks, how it learns, and what this all means for, well, everything, especially the future of search.
Okay, let's kick things off with a big question. What if your Google search could actually think? I mean, really think. What if, instead of just spitting out a list of blue links, it could understand what you're asking, reason about it, and even create with you?
Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today with Google Gemini. It's Google's big answer to that very question. And its superpower? It's something called natively multimodal. Now, that's a fancy term, but what it really means is this thing wasn't just fed a bunch of books. No, it was built from the ground up to understand pictures, computer code, and even video, all at the same time. It's like it has multiple senses all working together.
All right, so here's what's on the docket today. First, we'll look at how this AI's brain actually works. Then we'll get into its senses, how it sees more than just words. After that, we'll tackle the big topic of safety. How do you teach an AI to behave? And finally, we'll put it in the ring and see how it stacks up against the other heavyweights.
Okay, Section 1. The AI's digital brain. So, how on earth does a machine like Gemini even begin to understand human language? You know, the stuff you and I say every day. It's definitely not magic. It's all about translating our messy human world into something a computer can actually process. And it all kicks off with something called tokenization. The best way to think about it is like you're a chef. Before you can cook, you've got to prep your ingredients, right? You chop up the vegetables, the meat. Tokenization is exactly that, but for language. It chops up senses into these little pieces called tokens. They can be whole words or even just parts of words. These tokens are the basic ingredients the AI is going to cook with. So the engine that powers all of this is called the transformer architecture. And let me tell you, this thing was a total game changer for the world of AI. The secret sauce is a mechanism called self-attention. It's what lets the model look at an entire sentence all at once and figure out which words are the most important and how they all relate to each other.
Okay, but how does self-attention really work? Let's get into it. Imagine a simple sentence. The cat sat on the mat. For every word, like sat, the AI creates something called a query. It's basically asking a question, like, hey, who or what is doing the sitting here? Then it looks at all the other words, which have their own labels called keys. The key for the word cat is going to be a super strong match for the query from sat. And boom, the AI figures out that the cat is the one doing the sitting. It's this constant process of asking and matching that builds up a really deep understanding of context. All right, so that's how it handles language. But now, we're going to move beyond just text. And honestly, this is where Gemini really starts to shine. This is what separates it from being just a fancy chatbot and turns it into a genuine reasoning engine. Check this out. This is a perfect example of what we mean by natively multimodal. Gemini isn't just looking at that image on the left and saying, that's a picture. No way. It's looking at the image, reading the user's text request, and at the same time, writing the Python code on the right to make it happen. It's thinking in pixels, words, and code simultaneously. That's a huge deal. And what supercharges this whole multimodal thing is its absolutely massive context window. You can think of a context window as the AI's short-term memory. For Gemini 1.5 Pro, that memory is big enough to hold and analyze up to 3 hours of video content. Imagine watching a full movie and being able to ask detailed questions about something that happened in the first 5 minutes. That's the kind of power we're talking about. So Gemini doesn't just sit there and understand stuff. It's built to do things. It has a whole toolkit of advanced capabilities. With function calling, it can reach out to other apps and APIs to get real-time info, like checking the weather or booking you a flight. Code execution means if you give it a tricky math problem, it can literally write and run its own little program to solve it. It even has what Google calls a thinking budget, which is just a cool way of saying it can take a moment to really reason through a complicated question before it gives you the final answer. Okay, so we have this incredibly powerful AI that can think, see, and act. That's amazing, but it also brings up a huge question. How do you make sure it's safe? An AI this capable absolutely has to be taught how to be responsible. So what's Google's strategy for making sure Gemini is helpful but also harmless?
Well, one of the main techniques is something called reinforcement learning from human feedback, or RLHF for short. Now, I know this diagram looks a little intense, but the basic idea is actually pretty straightforward. You have real people look at a bunch of different answers the AI comes up with. Then, they rank those answers from best to worst. All of that human feedback gets fed into a separate reward model. Over time, that reward model gets really good at predicting what a helpful and safe answer looks like from a human's point of view.
But you can imagine, having humans review everything would be super slow and incredibly expensive. It just doesn't scale. And that's where another really smart idea comes in: constitutional AI. With this method, they use another AI to help with the training. They give this AI a constitution, basically a list of rules and principles to follow, and it provides feedback on the other AI's answers. It's a way to make the whole safety training process way faster and more consistent.
All right, so now we know how Gemini thinks, how it learns, and how Google tries to keep it safe. But let's zoom out and look at the big picture. This isn't happening in a vacuum. There are other major players out there, like OpenAI and Anthropic. So how does Gemini actually stack up in the big AI assistant race?
This graph gives us a great look at the competitive landscape. Basically, you've got performance on one axis and cost on the other. That top line is called the efficiency frontier. You can think of it as the best bang for your buck line. It shows the models that give you the most power for a certain price. And as you can see, Gemini 1.5 Pro is sitting right there on that frontier, which means it's one of the most efficient, powerful models out there right now. And it's not just about efficiency. The raw power is there too. The numbers back it up. Take a look at this benchmark called GPQA. This isn't your average trivia quiz. These are graduate-level reasoning questions, really tough stuff. And Gemini 1.5 Pro comes out on top, beating its biggest competitors. This shows it's not just about spitting back facts, it's about being able to genuinely reason through complex problems.
So what do you think? If you found this trip inside Gemini's mind interesting, do us a huge favor and hit that like button. And make sure you're subscribed to The Explainer so you don't miss our next deep dive into the tech that is literally changing our world.
And that leaves us with one final question for you. After seeing how Gemini thinks, how it sees, and how it reasons with all kinds of different information, does it make you think twice about using something like ChatGPT? Would you actually consider making the switch? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear what you think. Thanks for watching.